So it's lesson 8, and we started our class just with a little brainstorm about the e-commerce process and what things we're going to need. We already created a shop controller. Last week, we put one method in it, an index method. So most of our work is going to be writing custom methods in that controller today. We're going to look at filtering query results using a where clause. We're going to implement a session variable, and then we're going to generate some views for the shopping pages using some of the different view templates that come with Visual Studio. So this is our plan for this week. Next week, we'll primarily focus on the actual checkout, receipt, payment, order history, all of that kind of end of the process. So let's open up our project for today. I'll also mention I did mark all of the Facebook labs, so if you submitted the lab, you should have a grade for that. Let's open up the last chapter. And get it running. So last week, the last thing we did, I guess it was before reading week, was we built this shop controller with one method in view, with this index method. So as an anonymous user, I can just click on shop, and I'll get a list of categories here. When I click, it's going to call a method shop by category and pass in the ID of the category I've selected, but this was as far as we got. So where we want to start today is by building the shop by category method and view. What do you think, what should happen on this page? So a customer comes, they click on shop, they choose a category. What should be displayed in this view that we're going to build? When a user clicks on one of the categories, what should they see? Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Luke. We want to show the books that were in that category. And we can use, if we want, we can use this same card view. So we use this same kind of layout and design. Instead of just showing the books in a table, we'll maybe use this same Bootstrap card layout. So first, we need to go and create this method, this shop by category method. And it's going to have an ID parameter for the category we want. I'm going to close up all my files. I can just close everything. Excuse me. And we are going to go to the shop controller. So we created this file before reading week. It was just an empty controller. We added a database variable at the class level. We created a constructor that accepts a database connection instance whenever our controller gets instantiated. And then we had an index method where we are using our database connection and our categories DB set to just get the list of categories. We're sorting them alphabetically by name, and then we just pass that result set to the view. So that's what's populating this page. So when we click, we're calling shop by category with an integer parameter. So we need to define that now. So this will be at get / shop by category. So I'm just going to outline the URL of our method. I'm going to call the method shop by category. And our method will accept an ID parameter. So we want to query products filtered by the selected category ID parameter. I'll create a variable called products. We'll use our database connection. Oops. Sorry. We'll use our books DB set. Sorry, this should say books. Doing 3 different versions of this store this semester, sometimes I get confused between which day of the week it is and what I called my objects. So what we want here is to use a where clause. So what do you suppose should go in here? What does our query expression look like? So that instead of getting all the books, we only get the books, as Megan and Luke said, in the category the user clicked on. So our query expression, you can look up at line 24, the query we have there for a bit of a clue. If you think you have a guess, maybe throw it in the chat. What's that where clause going to be? Yeah, Luke, you're on the right track. We'll just use a lambda expression. So I'll use B as this anonymous parameter. So now we can set b.category ID equal to our ID parameter. And again, we'll convert this to a list. So we're using the lambda expression. So B represents a book, and we're filtering it on the category ID property that it would be equal to the ID in our URL. And then we can just call return view. And we can pass in our query result here. So this should give us the books, but instead of getting this all the books in the database, it's going to filter them. Yes, Hannah, it does built-in SQL injection checking. Excellent question. So this would be the safe way. We've also defined it as an integer. So we can try it. If it's not an integer, it will also crash. We can try it in a minute and see. So let's go ahead and have a look. Actually, I guess we can't check it yet because we don't have a view. So we want to scaffold the shop by category view. Then we can test this out. So we've only got 2 lines of code in the method. We'll probably tweak it a little bit. So I'm just going to right click my method name and choose add view. I'm going to pick razor view, and we're going to supply a strongly typed model, which is the book model. So click add. The view name will be shop by category. We could pick a list. And our model class is going to be book. right? This page is going to display a list of books. Now, by default, this will generate the list of books in an HTML table. We're going to change that formatting to use the Bootstrap card view. But just for now, these are the options I'll pick. So the view name is shop by category, which matches our method name. The template is list. The model is book. And our data context is our usual application DB context. We'll reference script libraries and use a layout page. So when you've selected all these options in the add view, you can just click the add button. So we're going to want to make a bunch of changes here, but we get a model, an IEnumerable of type book. This page receives a list of books. We've got a heading, a create new, which we're going to get rid of. And then we've got an HTML table that loops through all the books. So we're going to simplify a lot of this, but I'm just going to try it. So now if I just refresh, so I'll shop, I pick nonfiction. I get my 3 nonfiction books. When I click fiction, I get my 3 fiction books. So our filter is doing its job. Our where clause here in the controller is doing what we need it to do. Now the query result by default is going to show the books in order by book ID, which if our page gets long may not be the best. So we want to add an order by clause here as well. So we're going to filter by category. We're also going to order by book B.title. So we're both filtering by category and ordering alphabetically by book title. So now our list will appear A to Z. So you can add this order by clause into our query. So now the books are going to be sorted alphabetically, NST in this case. If we add new books, they will just appear in the sequence based on the title. Now we do want to reformat this page. The table doesn't really serve our purposes here. We want to show the book titles, and then under each card, we want to show some information about the book. And then eventually we want a little add to cart button right here even. So if a user knows it's the book they want without seeing the full details, they can just add it right from this page. So let's go back to our view and let's start cleaning this up. In our title, we'll say shop by category. I'm going to get rid of this shop by category here entirely. I'm going to have to say, you are shopping with a colon. And then we're going to want to display the category name here so the user knows which category they're looking at. We'll use the view bag for that in a minute. I'm going to get rid of the create new. And I'm going to get rid of everything above the for each and up to the table. So getting rid of the table heading, and table body. We'll get rid of the closing table head and table body. I'm going to get rid of the TR and the last TD. So we're going to use similar HTML wrapping that we did in our shop index view. So at the top, I'm going to put up a section with the class of row card group. And I'll move the closing tag right down to the very bottom outside of our loop. I'm actually going to open up the shop index view because it already has most of the HTML we want. So in shop and index, I'm actually just going to copy what's here. I'm going to copy all the code inside of our loop. And I'm just going to replace what's here. Oh, we got one extra set of brackets, which I don't need. So in here, we're going to make a few changes. When the user clicks on a product, it's actually going to take them to the books controller. The ASP action will be details. And the root ID in this case is going to be our item.bookID. And inside of the card, we want to display our item.title. So this is now going to show the book titles. Each book title will be a link. I'll throw the full section in the chat. Not trying to overwhelm you with the HTML and the Bootstrap formatting. Let's just see how this looks. So I'm going to shop. And now when I click on a category, it says you are shopping, and I just get the books as Bootstrap cards. And if I click, we'll have to deal with this here. This book details, it should be public. It's not right now. So we'll want to override that authentication rule. So now I can see the book titles here. We should add some other information, though, into these Bootstrap cards. We might not add everything about the books. What other information should show up in each card? Okay, yep, I agree. The author should be here. Price, agree. Quinn, yep. Thanks, Quinn. Thanks, Megan. The author, the price, and let's just go and look. Yep, we'll add a buy now. So here's the model right here. We can see all our fields. So we're going to add the author. We're already showing the title. We're going to show the price. don't know if we had the year. We don't actually. I don't think we actually have the year. But I think there's one other property here we should include. Yeah, if it's got an image, let's show the image. So if we go and look, for example, I think I'll keep this site open. We can maybe borrow a little bit from like how Indigo's cart works. So if I search ASP.NET, right here, if there's an image, we get it. So we get title, image, author, year, which we don't have, price, add to cart. So, and then there's placeholder images as well. So we can sort of mimic this a little bit. Underneath here, I also want to make the title a little bigger. So I'm going to add one class, maybe a class of H5, which should make the book titles stand out a little more. Also, because they're links, they appear in a different color, so that's good. We could add on a few headings here. So at item.author. Item.price. So we can, the title should be a little bigger. That's why I'm going to use H5. And then the author, item, and price can be in smaller headings. We're going to need to format the price as well. Megan, we would need to use a string expression, like a substring function. The proper way to format our price would be this. We'd use @string.format. We're going to format as currency our item.price. I mean, you could just stick a $sign in there if you wanted to. Using string.format with the web server's regional currency setting would be the most appropriate way of doing this. So now they're formatted. And now we can show the image or our placeholder underneath. So we can say if their image is not null, we will show it. So that's going to be found in our image books folder. And I think we'll need to use a class. What did we use? I'm just going to go and look at the class we used in our books index. Yeah, we used class equals thumb. So we can use that same class. So our book covers aren't giant. They fit nicely into those cards. So if we have an image, we're going to display it. If we don't, we're going to display the placeholder image. So inside of books, we've got this little placeholder. So every book will show an image. It's just that in some cases, this will be an actual photo, and in other cases, it's going to be a placeholder, much like we're seeing on Indigo's site. Right, that's looking a little better. Okay, so starting to look a little bit like an actual art. We want to add a little form here as well, where we've got a quantity box and a buy now, or an add to cart button. So we've got the option, just like on Indigo, if I know this is the book I want, I can just add it to cart right from here, or I can click the book title and it's going to take me to the product details. I can read more about it, and then I can choose to add to cart from here if I want. So we're going to kind of replicate that functionality. We'll also need to deal with the category name. So now let's add in here, in our card body, let's add a little form. So our method is post, and our action is going to be /shop/add to cart. So this is the URL that's going to get called when the user clicks add to cart underneath any of the books. There's going to be two pieces of information we need in order to add this item to the cart. What are those two pieces of information? Give you a hint. The user's going to choose one of them, and we're going to supply the other one programmatically. Okay. Yes, Megan, we'll come to the sessions. We will need the session ID. Yes, I wasn't thinking of that, but we'll need that one as well. So right from within our form, what do we need to know to add something to the cart? If you think of our add to cart method that we're going to have to create. In any kind of shopping cart, there's two vital pieces of information that have to get supplied. Let's go back here for a minute. So we have all these add to cart buttons. What's the difference between these three buttons that we see? Right, thank you, Megan. One thing we're going to have to pass is the book ID, right? So we know which product is it. The other thing that we're going to add in our little form is we can add a little quantity. Indigo doesn't have this, but we could actually let the user pick a quantity right here. Just be a little more convenient in case they want to buy multiple copies. They don't have to add one and then go into the cart and update it. So let's add two items in the form. First one will be a hidden input called book ID. So we're just going to store We don't want the user to type in the book ID. We automatically want it embedded in the little add to cart form. And then we'll create a little input for the quantity label and text box. So we'll put on a label. And then an input, the name and ID will be quantity. It'll be required. And maybe we'll set the value. We'll give it a default value of 1. And we'll say type equals number. So this will give the user a little text box that'll accept values between 1 and 999. We'll default the value to 1. And then lastly, inside our form, we can put an add to cart button here. So we're going to embed a form inside each card underneath each book. There's going to be a label and a text box for quantity, and then there's going to be an add to cart button. You can't click add to cart if the quantity is empty. It's going to be required. It must be a numeric value between 1 and 99,999. We'll see how this renders in the browser and decide if we've got to make any changes to it. It's not bad. I'd like to shrink this box. It's way too big. And also add a little bit of padding or margin above it. Maybe here. Let's see. I add a margin top of 5 pixels to my form. That's too much. I'll just add a margin top of 2. Still a little close. We'll try 3. I'll just play around with, you can play around with what you think looks good. Yeah, I think that's better. Yeah, okay, so Chrome does shrink it, but I'm going to create a little class for this so that I can make it smaller. It doesn't need to be anywhere near that wide. So inside my input, I'll add a class of input small. And then I'm going to go to the style sheet and I'll define this input small class. I'll give it a width of, I think, maybe 75 pixels. That way our text box won't be so wide. So I'm going to add this class definition onto the quantity box. I'll open up Solution Explorer, www root CSS, and I'll go to site.css, scroll down to the bottom, and I'll define input small, 75 pixels wide. So now it looks like this. I think that looks better. We spaced it out appropriately. We've sized it, kind of right-sized it. So I can't go below 1. I can't put in alpha characters. It'll tell me. I also can't hit add to cart if I've left the quantity box required. So instead of having one form on the whole page, each Bootstrap card has its own form. They all post to the same place, and they all will send a quantity and a book ID. We've got 2 small cleanup items here. First one is we need to show the category name. Second cleanup item is we need to override the authentication on the book's details method. So let's do those couple of things, and then this page I think is done. I'm happy with it. If you guys have other suggestions, I'm all ears. Otherwise, if you're happy with it, then we'll clean these 2 things up, and then we'll move on to the next page. So we need to deal with the category name. So one way to do this, there's a few ways to do this. Let's see. If we include, we've got 2 options to get the category name. We can run a separate query using the ID to just go and get the name of the category that matches, or we can do a join in our existing query to include the categories along with the books and then grab the category ID from the first book. Either one of these would work. I think that second method where we do a join is probably a little more efficient. So in our query, let's see if we can do it. Now we'll try it this way. Let's see if it works. So viewbag dot category equals I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. We're going to see. This value might be null, but we're going to take the first book and reference the parent object and then the name property. We're going to stick that in the view bag, and we'll see if we can render this in our H1 tag at the top of the view. So now in our view, after my colon says you are shopping, I'll use the view bag to try and output this string. Don't know if it's going to work. We'll give it a try. Okay. Nope, that object doesn't exist. So okay, we'll just do it with a separate query. So because we have the ID, we can just call the find method. That's searching on a primary key value. And we only want one category here. And it tells us when we use find, if an entity with the given primary key value is being tracked by the database context, which it is, it's returned immediately without making a request to the database. So now we can just use category.name. We'll see if that. So now our category name shows up. So this was the better way of doing it. Right, here we've got one book, category name shows up, no picture. So we've got our placeholder. But now our category names are passed. Yes, so what we could do here, okay, yes, that's true, Megan. That's a good point. So what if there are no books in the category? Or let's say I put in a category ID that doesn't exist. Okay, so we should probably handle that scenario. So we can say if so if books is not equal null, actually, no, sorry. This is going to run even if there are no books. If there's no book in the category, it's still going to give us the category name. So let me add a category. I'm going to go and add a category as an administrator with no books in it. Actually, there might be one. Yeah, it still shows the category name. It just doesn't show any products. So it's actually okay. Yes, before it would have crashed the way I did it. Yes, it would have. So this is actually better to divorce the querying to make sure we're getting the category name regardless. It's a good point. And if the category ID doesn't exist, we probably should redirect the user, actually. So if the user puts in some category ID that doesn't exist, we'll just take them back to the list of categories. So that way, if somebody changes the URL parameter, they change the ID number to, category ID 4 million. We don't have category ID 4 million. It'll just take them back to the list. Probably an efficient way to handle the error. And that way it will never crash here. It won't get to this line if there isn't a category found in the matching category in the database. So if I do this, it'll just bring me back here instead of crash. Thank you for the suggestions, Megan. Last item before we take a break, we need one line of code to make our book details public. So I should be able to click on a book, and even without being logged in, I should be able to see the book details. Just like here. I'm not logged in, but I can still get here. So we'll go to the books controller, and we'll scroll down to the details, which for me starts on line 35. I'm just going to add the allow anonymous annotation here. So we're going to make this page public. We're not going to declare this at the controller level. At the controller level, we're restricting access to administrators only. But the details method, we're going to make that one method public. Anybody can go in and look at the details of a book. They don't have to be an administrator. They don't even have to be a customer. They don't have to be logged in. We don't care. Yes. We're going to make a bunch of changes to this page next. We're going to want to display the image. We're going to change what backed to list does, which tries to call the book index. And we're actually going to add the add to cart and the quantity, our little form, in here as well. And if we look at, so when we're looking at a book details here, Indigo, right, we've got quantity and add to cart here. So we're going to modify this view. And yeah, we'll have to deal with both those links, and for sure the edit will come out. Yep, great point. Okay, so we started this process. This page is basically done. Our shop by category page is done now. So when we come back, we're going to make the changes we need to the book details. We're going to write the add to cart method, and then we're going to build the cart page. So we can start to store what people are putting in their carts. And then we're going to also have to come back to the session variable, as Megan mentioned, right? How do we track if two users are shopping at the same time, they both put the same product in their cart? How are we distinguishing one user from another? So we'll have to address that. I will upload what we've done so far to GitHub. Let's take a 10-minute break here, and we'll come back at 2:05.